Hello and welcome. This is Mouse Gunner, and we're back with some more Automation, the Car Company Tycoon game. Continuing on with the campaign roleplay of the Edison Car Company in 1991. And the model we're going to be looking at in this video is the Edison Constellation, which is our large, more comfort-oriented sedan. And let's go ahead and jump into the standard trim here. Now, I was a little bit more simple with the trims than I did with the last video. I went a little bit more complex and did a whole bunch of things, some of them a little bit more on the experimental side. But this time, I kind of kept things a little bit more simple. But let's go ahead and start at the beginning with the model. Now, the body I chose is this larger one here that is kind of hidden under the lock, but it's a 114.5-inch wheelbase. And I think it fits the style of the car that we're going for. So as far as the styling goes, go around the vehicle. So very reminiscent of a Crown Vic in appearance, which is exactly what we're going for. And let's go ahead and look at our chassis here. So this time I decided, in the past, I've always been going with a ladder chassis, and the main reason I was doing that is, if we draw that comparison to a Crown Vic, a Ford Crown Vic, or Crown Victoria, as it's more properly called, if we were to draw that comparison, that vehicle for pretty much its entire production was a ladder chassis, and it was really preferred by police for that reason, because with a ladder chassis, if a body panel gets, dented, you get into a little bit of a not a heavy accident, but a little bit of a bump, and you get that body panel dented, well, you just undo the bolts that hold that body panel on, and you bolt on a new one. And away you go. Really easy and fast to repair body panel damage. And amongst other reasons. And with a monocoque chassis, usually the body panels are welded onto the chassis themselves because the panels themselves are kind of part of that structure. So if you wanted to do the same thing, you would have to cut off the body panel and re-weld on a new one. And that is not necessary. That's much harder to do, obviously, and, what have you. So, that's one amongst many reasons why, ladder chassis was preferred for a long time. But we get a lot of benefits if you look at the comparison between a monocoque chassis and a ladder chassis. And I think it's about time that we modernized the Constellation and used a monocoque chassis instead. So in any case, we're using corrosion-resistant steel. We're going with a front longitudinal setup. So far, with our other two models that we've showcased for this year, we've been doing front transverse setup. I think with this, we're going to be doing a more traditional setup. We do have a double wishbone in the front and a double wishbone in the rear, and this is all about the comfort. Now, you have some other benefits in sportiness and drivability as well, and drivability is another thing we're concerned with. So drivability and comfort are big concerns for this vehicle and what we're really striving for. But the most comfort-oriented of the different suspensions outside of a multi-link suspension, which I don't think I want to go to just yet, it's the best you're going to get. So, I mean, if you look at pretty much anything else, this is the most comfortable you're going to get, and that's exactly what we're going for. Corrosion-resistant steel as well for the panel material. This keeps, it's a compromise for keeping things, affordable, safe, and you have a decent corrosion resistance and decent prestige. Downsides are steel's very heavy. So there's that to contend with. I don't think you really have much of a difference, though, between corrosion-resistant steel and just normal steel and the other categories outside of corrosion resistance. That's mostly the difference. And you have a little bit more material cost, but that makes sense. It's corrosion-resistant steel rather than just steel. All right, moving along. Let's go ahead and hop into the engine so we can see. This is the base engine, so it's a 3-liter V6. This is a modified version of the same engine that we used in the Star. And let's see what kind of power we're getting out of it. So we're getting 169 foot-pounds of torque, and 154 horsepower. So a little bit better performance than we got out of the V6 that we had in the Star, as we said. All right, moving on to the trim. Let's start with the gearbox here. So automatics across the board. No manual transmissions to be found. But even still, we're performing not bad with the V6 that's in here. 10.9 seconds from 0 to 62. Now, considering this is a heavy car, I believe this was about the same performance we were getting out of the automatic transmission version of the Star. So I think that we balanced out that power gain. That little bit of power gain was able to balance out the gain in weight quite well. All right, moving along, we have, as far as the way the gearbox was set up, I went with, not a very much of an economy gear with a fourth gear. And we don't have, the fuel economy is not terrible for what type of car it is, but it's not as good as we saw out of, for instance, the Star again. And a little bit more aggressive spacing. Now, we have a heavier car, so even with all that, wheel spin's not too bad, but we also have bigger tires, which we'll be seeing here in a second. So we have two 15s in front and rear, and again, I did the same size both front and rear, although I would benefit out of maybe a wider tire in the rear than in the front for rotation purposes, so you can rotate tires. Wheel diameter I've made much larger, and we also have rim diameter up a size. Now, this is one I really hem and hawed on because I think in the early 90s, you didn't really have quite that trend yet of making the rims, bigger on cars like you have nowadays. And I think even with a car of this size, you more than likely would have had 15-inch rims. But I went a little bit bigger because I wanted a little bit bigger brakes to contend with the heavier car. But we also went with medium compound road and steel rim material. All right, as far as the brakes go, we have solid disc 2-piston brakes in both front and rear, and I went with as big of brakes as I could fit on this thing because, as you can see, brake feed's quite an issue, and we're going to get heavier as we put in V8s and what have you, so that is something to consider. All right, now we move on to the cooling airflow, and as per usual, I went with about 10 over what is required. I also have a fully clad under tray, best aerodynamics that we could possibly get. And moving along, we have the interior. Now, this is the standard trim. So we have 5 seats. We want to increase the passenger, practicality as much as we can. And we have a standard interior, standard cassette. But I made ABS system standard on the Constellation for all trims this time around. And we have standard safety. All right, moving along with the suspension, we have progressive springs rather than standard. And as we can see the difference here, we're going to lose out in sportiness, which is not really a concern of mine. The two concerns that I said earlier were drivability and comfort, and we can notice by the progressive springs that we're gaining in both. So that's exactly what we're going for. It's a little bit more expensive as well, but that's okay. We also went with gas monotube. Now, if I really wanted to maximize the comfort of this car, I could go with a hydropneumatic or even an air system. But you have to consider, first off, with hydropneumatic, you have a big weight gain, you have a huge material cost, pretty much costs 10 times what we were paying before, and a pretty significant production unit increase as well. But you also have to keep in mind that hydropneumatic systems have a lot of reliability concerns, so I would expect reliability to really drop if I selected this. As well as air system, you'd have the same problem. It's not as big of a difference in the weight. It's not as expensive or time-consuming to build. So this is kind of a compromise between your hydropneumatic system. But the problem is an air system can leak, and that can give you reliability issues. So that's why we went with progressive. Keep things simpler, keeping things more reliable. Okay, so as far as the suspension goes, as per normal, I went with the normal preset and then kind of modified it from there, stiffening where I felt was necessary. We have a little bit stiffer in the front with the damper stiffness to, and the more and more I play this, the more I learn about it. And I think one of the key things, if you're building a model or trim, is to keep an eye on this graph. You want it to be as smooth as you possibly can. Now, keep in mind, you'll always have this big, peaked bump. But really what you want to look for is what happens after the bump. Because you're going over a bump. There's going to be a bump. But what happens down here? If you don't have your suspension set up very well, oftentimes you'll have, like some oscillation at the end. So it will go like this, down, and then back up. You really want to avoid that because that's going to really give you a bumpy ride. And that's not really good for your comfort nor your handling on the road, because in those instances where your car is, or your tires are bumping up and down like that, they're not getting the full contact with the road. So you're losing grip in those instances. And that's not really good. So that's one thing you really want to keep an eye on. It's not so much what happens here. It's what happens down here that's the important point. And you also have the similar dynamic with the body. So mostly I was focusing on the wheels because I think those are the bigger tells of what's going on. And I think those are going to have more of an effect on your vehicle and how it handles and how comfortable it is. But the body is another thing to consider. And again, it's not what happens in this part. It's what happens down here that's the more important element. Okay, moving along. Let's go ahead and look at our detailed stats. So we have drivability. And as per usual, I'm just going to give you a few seconds to look at each tab. And if you want to look at them in detail, go ahead and pause. We have sportiness, comfort, prestige, and finally we have safety. Now, as I did in the last video, I'm only going to focus on these main tabs up here. I'm not going to focus on these more ancillary tabs for the moment. Unless there's really a demand for me to do so. Let's go ahead and go to the test track. Now, we already talked about the 0 to 62 time, but top speed, pretty decent, 145.8 miles an hour. I think that's a very marked improvement over what we were getting out of the Star. Even though we have a heavier car, and we're only getting that very slight bit of improvement in horsepower. I think this has something to do with the rear-wheel drive layout versus the front-wheel drive layout. Also, we're noticing a weight distribution that is much more even front to back. So as a result, we're getting pretty decent cornering G. And the cornering speeds are pretty good as well. I think better than what we were getting out of the Star. So I think a lot of that has to do with the weight distribution. Now, some of that might have to do with the suspension setup we did, and I could be wrong with this roll angle. I was always under the assumption that a lower number was better, because usually, for instance, if you were to stiffen up your sway bar, you're going to lose roll angle. And I'm not getting really a color change here, and I don't know, that might be a bug. So I always assumed that a smaller number was better, but I could be wrong on that. Any case, let's get back to our test track. So let's go ahead and see our time. I'm going to expect this to be decent, but not necessarily spectacular. All right, let's just go ahead and stop that, and let's look at our time. So we got 1 minute 45.61, actually better than I would have expected. And I think we're getting a direct comparison here with the Star, because I looked at the Star just before I did this video, and this was the sport trim of the Star, which I intended to have a decent track time. And as we can see, this is actually not too bad, because this was the best performing trim that the Star had to offer. And this trim that I just did is probably going to be one of the worst performing. The premium trims will probably perform a little bit worse, but of the standard trims, this is going to be the worst performer. So that's interesting to see. Okay, now that we've looked at that, let's go ahead and jump into the other 3-liter trim, the premium trim, and then we'll jump into our V8s. So the main difference between our standard trim and the premium trim is going to be the interior here. So we have premium interior, premium entertainment, but we also have traction control added on. So that's going to have an effect on the stats as well. But we also have a little bit of a change in the gearbox. I made it a little bit more aggressive. So I lowered the top speed to try and make it, again, more aggressive, and I increased the spacing. But we're noticing that the wheel spin is still not really a concern with this vehicle, because it has a lot of weight on those tires. So not really having to contend with it, at least with the V6 versions. But as we can see with the 0-62 time, we did a very good job with the gearbox of getting that acceleration time back, to be more reasonable. So we only have a little bit of a difference between the premium trim and the standard trim. Only a single tenth of a second. So not bad, not bad at all. And let's go ahead and jump in here. We'll look at the detailed stats. So we have drivability. We have sportiness. We have comfort. We have prestige. And finally, we have safety. Let's look at the test track. So it looks like we lost a little bit in our top speed. Then we already talked about the 0 to 62 time. Cornering G's looks a little bit worse, and I think our weight distribution is slightly more front heavy. I could be wrong with that, though. It's very, very slight, the difference, whatever it is. But let's go ahead and start this on up. And we see our direct comparison. It is a little bit worse, which we expected. So moving on from there, we'll go into our V8. And, of course, we have a lot more power to deal with. So we'll look at the engine here in a second. So as far as our power goes, we're looking at 283 foot-pounds of torque and 246 horsepower. So we're pretty marked improvement in the power. So let's see what we get as a result of all that power. All right, starting off with the gearbox. So we have a 4-speed automatic. Now this is set up a little bit more economy than we've seen out of our other gearboxes, and that was because of the wheel spin. I'm trying to make this a little bit more tame. We still have definitely a deal of wheel spin. Not a huge amount, but a little bit. And as I said in my last video when I was talking about the Star, having a little bit isn't too bad because I think they really mitigated how severe of a penalty wheel spin was than it was in the past. And the spacing as a result is not as aggressive as what we were seeing before, and the top speed is a little bit higher. Well, a lot higher because we have more power to work with. But you also note, as far as the drivability stats go, we're not really suffering too much by having this big V8. So that's kind of interesting to see. Now, the tire setup's going to be exactly the same. No real change here. Brake setup is also the same. And we're going to notice brake fade. There's more of that because we have more weight and we're potentially going at higher speeds. So I think you could expect that. Cooling airflow, we're requiring a lot more cooling airflow than we needed before. So again, roughly 10 above. Interior is going to be the same as it was with our other standard trim. You're more than likely going to notice differences with the suspension because, I mean, definitely you have a difference in weight going on. So that's been changed. But as we can see, again, very smooth down here, no real oscillation, so that's good to see. All right, so let's look at our detailed stats. So we have drivability, we have sportiness, comfort, prestige, and finally, safety. All right, let's look at our test track. So, big improvement here, top speed, 164.8, almost 165 miles an hour. We do see the weight distribution heavier on the front. So I can already tell the cornering G's that we're getting is not quite as good, and I don't think our speeds in the corners are as good either. But our acceleration, big improvement, 8.5 seconds from 0 to 62. Now, this isn't all about straight line speed, this vehicle, but it's good to see that. Any case, I'm pretty sure this is going to be faster. Let's just see. All right. Yeah, definite improvement. 1 minute 39.87. So we shaved quite a bit of time off of our V6s. All right, so we have one more trim to look at, and that's our Premium 5.0. And again, the main difference is going to be the interior here. So we, again, upgraded Premium Interior, Premium Entertainment, and Traction Control. As well as a little bit of change in the gearbox, more than likely. So a little bit less aggressive, it looks like. But 0 to 62 time only, again, a tenth of a second difference, which I find acceptable. So let's go ahead and see what kind of performance we're going to get out of this after we look at our detailed stats. So we have drivability, sportiness, comfort, prestige, safety. All right, test track. So 165.3, it's actually increased in top speed. Weight distribution, I don't really remember. It's really close though, regardless. Cornering G's, I know this is green, but I don't think it usually is giving me, for whatever reason with this new update, it's not really giving you a direct comparison to your previous model, I don't think. But maybe a slight improvement here. But let's go ahead and do what we're really waiting for, and that's the track time. All right, this we will get a direct comparison. So we see a little bit of a drop-off, and I think the big reason for that is the acceleration differences. But not bad. Not bad at all. It's, a little bit less than half a second, which I think is perfectly acceptable for the differences. Okay, with all that done, let's go ahead and start off with our standard 3-liter engine, or V6, and look at our market share and see what categories they fit. So we're going to be a little bit all over the place. So we have family sport, again, being our primary category, even though I wasn't going for that. It seems like that is kind of our forte. But we have the other two categories that we're filling, and I would assume, this is exactly what we're going for. So to see that family premium is listed, perfect. So we have the family premium comes in as our second, well, actually our third best. Our next best is the fun premium. So family sport, fun premium are our two big categories, and then we go down the family premium, which is really honestly what we were going for. Family sport is not too bad. It's interesting that the fun premium is better. So a small premium, everyday used car that is practical, safe, and fun to drive. Well, I don't know about the small element of that, but yep, okay. So a premium family sports car that is very safe and practical. All right, so what's the main difference? So drivability isn't as big of a concern for the family sports than the fun premium it is. So comfort was a bigger thing. So maybe we're not satisfying that as well. And prestige is a bigger thing as well. And I think that safety element is probably a real big part of that. So that might be a reason why this isn't performing as well, is because we don't have quite the safety that this category is looking for. So that might be a way that we would improve in these market segments. But one thing I'm noticing, though, outside of the family sport and the actual premium categories, which is what we're trying to go for, which we're not doing too bad in the commuter premium, we are pretty affordable in all of these segments. And again, we have the same 5% markup that I've been going with all my models since this has been added in. Okay, let's go ahead and look at another trim here. So we're going to jump into our premium trim, and I think, if I remember correctly, you're going to notice that what market segments care about our car is going to change. So we were here, here, here. Now we're here, here, here. Interesting, huh? So our biggest one now is utility premium, which is very interesting. So this is a prestigious premium utility vehicle with a strong focus on comfort. And because we put such an emphasis on comfort, I think that's why we're doing as well as we are. As you can see, the percentage of the comfort, pretty high. That's interesting. So our next best is commuter premium, and then after that, family premium, which is the category we're going for. So that's good to see. Again, affordability, we're pretty good in these categories. So that's another thing that's nice to see. You want to be affordable in any segment that you're trying to go for, because that means that more people in that market segment can afford your car and are likely to buy it. So that's good to see. All right, let's jump into our 5-liter engine. I like to go over here because I think sometimes there's a bug if you don't do that. All right, let's go to our 5-liter engine. I think the bug is that it doesn't, like you'll see here, it loads in what market you've selected when you do that here. And I think if you're in the market tab, it doesn't do that right, and then you get a bug. Oh, by the way, the market that I've always been going with is Gasmia, which I think simulates, the United States better than the other two ones. So you also have Arcana, which I think is more like, I don't want to say third world, but a little bit, rougher conditions. People aren't as able to afford things, if I remember correctly. And then I think Frunia, I guess you would pronounce it, is more like Europe, maybe. And again, that's just me going off of my memory. You have to actually select the different market segments to get a description. So here, I think we get a description. So Gasmia is big, flat, rich country with good wide roads, high purchasing power, average weather, harshness, and so on and so on and so on. With Arcana, I'm thinking you're dealing with like really poor roads and people don't have a lot of money and things like that. Where Frunia, you're looking more like middle roads, like the road conditions are kind of middle and more narrow, and there's much more of concern for economy and emissions and things like that. So that's why I kind of draw those comparisons there. But in any case, now that we're in here with our V8, we see that we're in yet a couple other market segments. So we're in family sports still again, but that's not our biggest performer. Interestingly enough, our biggest performer is a muscle car. But if you think about it, we're actually fitting the category of what would be considered a muscle car. We've got a nice, powerful V8. We've got rear-wheel drive, nice straight-line performer, and that's exactly what we built. Now, there's going to be concerns, like things that the muscle car is more concerned about that we really didn't address. For instance, the muscle car here doesn't really care so much about comfort, but it's something that we really focused on. It does care about sportiness, though, and prestige. Now, prestige we probably did all right with, but the sportiness probably not as well as we could have done if we chose a couple different options. For instance, a manual transmission version, we probably would be even more competitive in this market. So that's interesting to see that we're in the muscle car category. We're in the fun premium category yet again, which is our second best. And then our third best is our family sport. But we also maintain a pretty good competitiveness in the family sport, family premium, and commuter premium categories, as well as this utility premium category as well. So very interesting to see, as well as we do all right in the premium budget. But as we can also see, our affordability is pretty fantastic still in these premium categories. So, I'm pretty happy with this. We're not as affordable in the muscle car category, but I think that makes sense because usually muscle cars are not that expensive comparatively. So interesting to see. But family sport, we're not doing so well. This is more of a premium setup, and this isn't all that affordable in that segment. Although people find it very competitive in that segment, not as affordable. Okay, after looking at that, let's go back to our overview and look at our last trim. And we'll probably see a little bit of differences yet again. So let's go into the market. So again, we're performing very well on our muscle car category or group. But now our primary is the utility premium. That has increased quite a bit. And we've noticed also an increase in the commuter premium, the family premium, the family sport premium, as well as the fun premium. But we've noticed a drop-off in the family sport. This is starting to really get out of the affordability of that category. So we're starting to really drop off. Just to show you how price has an impact on this, if we were to change our affordability down, you notice that suddenly our competitiveness goes way up. And a lot of that has to do with, the price having a factor on that. Less and less people are able to afford it. And also the comparison with other cars that are in that category, it's not as competitive because of that price. But when we come down here and we're starting to talk about the premium segment, we're doing a little bit better. But, that competitiveness is always going to be helped by having a lower price because, hey, you're more competitive, aren't you? But we're also concerned about a profit margin, so we have to go with some markup. Any case, as I said, it's very interesting to see these dynamics of, you were trying to build something in the family premium segment, and you kind of did, or at least I kind of did, with the car that I built here. But really, the interesting thing is that we're actually being very competitive in markets we weren't even attempting to be competitive in. So this is, something that is a big part of the learning experience here. And it doesn't necessarily mean that I won't gain sales from the family premium market, but maybe I didn't build the car addressing the concerns of the market that I was intending to. And as a result, we didn't really fit this as our primary. We fit other things. Doesn't mean that this car is bad and it won't get sales. It just, maybe we didn't do exactly what we were striving for when we built the car we built. And this is why I find this new update so fascinating, because it gives you actual feedback on, what markets you're filling. And, that's, to me, very interesting to see. All right, so let's do a really, really quick comparison here of the different trims that we have. And I think I'm going to just focus on the main big ones rather than getting into the more ancillary ones. So we're going to go ahead and look at our Constellation and how it fares between itself. I'm not going to compare it with any of our other trims necessarily. Here, I'll pop open the Star just as a direct comparison, but I'm not going to really mention it much. But definitely drivability, we did very well. I think this is the best of all the cars that we built. Let's go ahead and pop open the Luna too, just so we can confirm that. All right, so we did a little bit better with the Luna, but pretty good, pretty decent. Sportiness, good there too. And this is probably why we performed as well as we did in the muscle car segment, which is something we weren't even trying to go for. Now, comfort goes along the lines of, what kind of interior we have. But even still, with our standard trim, you notice how much of a benefit the way that we set up this car was. I mean, even comparing, for instance, our standard 5.0 versus the premium 3.0 over here, which is with all the premium interior and everything, it's exactly the same. So this, without all those interior choices, is performing just as well as one that does. So that's very interesting to see, and exactly what we expect to see. Now, as far as prestige, this is a pretty good performer as well, which makes perfect sense to me. And we've got a nice big V8 in some of these, and we've got a decent amount of power, so that makes sense. Safety, again, we're performing pretty well, but this is the heaviest and biggest of the vehicles that we've built so far, and I think that's a big determining factor. So let's hop down here to the production units, though, and the cost. So we can see, comparing it to other models, this is definitely takes us longer to build, and it's more expensive. And it follows along the lines that you would expect. Our smallest engine with the standard interior being the cheapest and the least time-consuming to build. Our V8 being a little bit more so. The premium trims even more so. And then, obviously the last one is both. The V8 and the premium is going to be the most time-consuming and the most expensive to build. And we can see that even our cheapest model, although it's cheaper to build than the premium version of the Star, it's more time-consuming, which you have to take that into a factor as well. So, definitely this is more expensive, but it's to be expected. That's what we were trying to build for, and we were trying to kind of fill that more premium market. So, again, I find the market element of this game fascinating, and I think that now that we have that, we can really judge the models that I'm building in this role play and really have, something to score, like a scorecard for all of these different trims that I'm doing and the models that I'm doing. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. This is Mouse Gunner signing out.